when you can go to Big Fertility and look through a booklet and select gametes, this is just straight up baby buying human trafficking.
My name is Jared Julia, and welcome to The Cave. Thanks so much for joining us. This is your podcast for pushing back against woke in education and in other parts of our society. Today's special guest is a woman by the name of Stacy Manning. She's from Them Before Us, a national children's rights organization based on the West Coast. She also wrote a book of the same title, and she co-wrote a book with Katie Faust called Raising a Conservative Kid in a Woke City. And Stacy Manning joins us now. Stacy, thank you so much for joining us on The Cave, for huddling with us in The Cave. Them Before Us is an organization, and it's a book, right?
It is. The founder, Katie Faust, and I actually reluctantly wrote that book. She's been doing all of the footwork all over the world, frankly, for Them Before Us, in order to promote the need for a global children's rights movement. And we'd written articles. We'd started a blog, or she'd started a blog, and I came alongside her uh, to promote the ideas that we were kind of working out, frankly, when we were writing the blog. We didn't necessarily go into it with this is what we're talking about, and these are our ideas. They evolved over time, and we realized, there's an overarching theme here, and it has to do with the rights of a child to be known and loved by their mother and father, and the myriad ways that we adults are putting our desires before the rights and needs of children. And so she would go and do these interviews, and so do you have a book? They would ask first and foremost. And like, Steve, we're gonna have to write a book. So I think it was right around, the irresponsible approach to COVID our governments took. And they
Right.
kicked all of our kids out of school. And we were trapped at home about the week that we actually decided we had to get to it. We had a contract signed, and it was time to actually write the book. So the pressure was on, inside and out. And I am so happy and proud to report that our book has been translated in, I believe, to date, 5 different languages.
Wow.
Yeah, because the truth has a ring to it. And it's stunning to me that we actually had to write the things that we wrote in that book. These are truths that should be very self-evident, but our penchant, especially here in Western culture, to sacrifice children on the altar of adult desire, is prevalent in so many ways that people don't necessarily know why they maybe feel uncomfortable about surrogacy or IVF, or single parenting by choice, or gay parenting. But I think we really did a thorough job, and a heartfelt job in covering those topics in a way that empowers people with the words and with the right approach. And the right approach is not anti anyone, it is pro child.
Yeah. And it does seem unimaginable that we're in an environment where it's necessary for you to write a book like this, because growing up, I'm a Gen Xer. So I grew up in an America where we were taught that other cultures exploited children, even our own culture during the Industrial Revolution. We really viewed childhood very, very differently. And but now we're so evolved in Western civilization that we treat children so much better. And yet now we've got this uh it's as if we've gone backwards, and we now treat children horribly. uh
We do.
yeah.
It's akin to human trafficking. When you can go to Big Fertility and look through a booklet and select gametes from maybe male and female. I mean, and then there was no background checks. There's no home study like there is in
Mm,
adoption. Um,
right.
this is just straight up baby buying, human trafficking. And the worst part, I think the most insidious part,
Mm,
is that the idea of it is great. Of course we want more families, and that's why we're totally completely off the rails when it comes to messaging,
right.
um, with the conservative and the Republican Party,
Hmm.
because everyone assumes positive intent. Everyone assumes that we're just trying to help families that are struggling to get pregnant. Fertility rates are in the
Hmm.
toilet, and babies are a beautiful thing. And I could not agree more. But the ramifications of that is that in Washington State here, for example, Ivan can come here from Ukraine with 8 women.
Yep.
They're only required to have one doctor's visit. They don't have to prove anything about their marital status, what their intention to do with the child is. And Ivan can leave this state with 8 impregnated women for, $100,000 apiece.
Yep.
And we have no idea the lives of these poor
Right.
infants.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
And
it's
and
really
so
mind
yeah.
blowing.
And then on the other side of it, you've got, the state of Maine, where I am, where they were considering a bill where children from other states could be brought to Maine and they could get, sex change operations and things like that. So it really is amazing how they really view the child as a thing that can be manipulated, that can be butchered, in a variety of ways where perfectly healthy genitals can be chopped off the child. And this stays with the child for the rest of their lives. And, and you look at the California law where the parent is totally taken out of the equation. They could do all this within the school system, and the parent doesn't need to be told anything. Once again, another thing for a Gen Xer, this is totally unimaginable in the America that I grew up in, that we were even having these types of conversations.
Yeah, it's the total commodification of our children, whether they're being bought and sold in fertility markets or being commodified by big pharma, being mutilated and chemically altered to be a lifelong customer. It's downright criminal. I can't go for a week without taking my thyroid medication, without my hair falling out. I'm
Right.
crazy depressed. I don't know which way is up, and you're pumping opposite sex hormones into um, the cocktail of pubescence that's already very intense. I Mangala would be impressed.
Well, and it's funny that you mention him, because Dr. Jordan Peterson had mentioned that Mengele's crimes against humanity are child's play compared to what
Mm.
we're doing to children, with these sex change operations, because it's so much more widespread, and the science is actually much weaker. That's the other thing that really strikes me, is that you would think that these are healthcare professionals. This is all based on science. This is all based on medical research, but they're not really following the science. They're really following an ideology. They're following a belief system.
Yeah, and further, it's even more insipid because, I mean, the Nazis tried to at least hide it.
Mm,
Um,
right.
Whereas, we're parading it and celebrating it, and it's also, brave and beautiful, and it is not.
Mm.
Yeah, we're gonna look back. I hope, and I hope soon, we're gonna look back at this period in time and think, my God, talk about mass formation psychosis. People have gone obviously insane. It's hard to, I used to, I would discount, I'm Christian,
Yep.
and I would discount, those silly mentions of demons and evil and
Right.
what have you in the Old Testament, and Jesus, sending the pigs off the cliff and what have you.
Right.
And I realized recently that, the arrogance of living in this time, why would they have gone anywhere um, just like Jesus is still around,
Right.
um, there can be no other description of what people are actually doing to their children and to other people's children for a paycheck than just pure unadulterated evil and demonic possession.
Yeah. Well, but there's also the money. This is very, very big business.
Oh yeah.
Mutilating the children. What you were talking about is just creating these babies um, for whoever. But this is somebody's making a lot of money off of all this, and we can't
Hmm.
lose sight of that.
It is. It's hard to. It's just hard to comprehend what people must tell themselves in order to sleep at night.
Mm.
The sheets must be nice and very cozy and soft with all that money making that they're doing. But it's truly it's hard for me to comprehend.
Now I see in the background there the book Raising a Conservative Child in a Woke City.
That's
Uh,
right.
it it's funny. My graphic novel it's a series called The Red Offenders, and they're loosely based on the Gang of Four during the Cultural Revolution. It seems like and then I noticed in your book cover it's got the hammer and sickle.
Mhm.
It seems people kind of push back on the notion that woke is reimagined Marxism, but it has so many precise parallels to
Mhm.
Marxism in almost every fashion.
And religious parallels as well.
Hmm.
It it seems like an ever moving target too. Like once it reminds me of I think it was God, I don't remember where I stumbled across it, but one day one guy's in favor with the um Chinese Communist Party. And the next day he's not in favor. He's cheering, oh, the tides have changed. I don't know exactly what happened, but now comrade so and so is out of favor and now you're in trouble because you weren't quite up with the very latest leading edge on what's socially acceptable and what's appropriate and what word we're using for something now, and how to identify yourself as part of the in crowd when it comes to woke ideology. So
Yeah.
it's almost part of the power that it has that it's an ever moving target, you know.
Yeah. And the only good news in all that is that, this is one of the manifestations, this is one of the parallels with Marxism, is that the Cultural Revolution was a purity test. It was
Mhm.
really Mao was killing a lot of the Marxists that weren't Maoist enough. But then after a while, it became a purity test of a purity test, and then a purity test of a purity test. And we see that in woke as well, where
Mhm.
somebody like J.K. Rowling is, one moment, like you said, is in good. She's the comrade that's in good with it with the woke establishment. But now they absolutely hate her, and it's because even though she passed the purity test, she didn't pass the purity test of the purity test. And
Such a
and
good
and
point.
that's how these things. The only good news is these things after a while implode. Because it's just a purity test of a purity test of a purity test, and it's just you exclude everyone except this tiny core group,
Yeah,
and
they eat one another and
yeah.
um, force you out. I mean, there's so many people that just in the last 5 years, you watch on the talking head scene
Hmm.
that were on the left, and it's been said before that the left left them, and they're becoming so concentrated and their ideals so extreme that we've got a big old tent. I think we say in the book that there's a lot of room under the Republican tent for the audit the Fed types and the libertarians.
Yeah.
The tent's
It,
gotten really big because they've made it very, very hard to be a part of the collective.
yeah, and in mainstream politics, you just look at somebody like Bill Maher, who's clearly on the left. He doesn't really
Mhm.
believe any of what we believe, and yet he's not woke, so he's banished from that. And then RFK Jr. Endorsing Trump.
Yeah.
It's and Jill Stein of the Green Party endorsing Trump. I mean, it's almost kind of scary. You're like, what is going on? But they haven't, like you said, they haven't changed their ideology. They didn't leave the left. The left left them, and
Yeah.
you just wonder, where is this going? where they keep pushing out all of these people that used to be loyal soldiers of theirs.
Yeah, the times are a bit too interesting for my
Mm.
taste, but it is an interesting political landscape to watch shift. Um, you know, the people who are the people that believe that we're in a simulation, like the simulationists, like,
Yeah,
okay, what season, whatever.
yeah,
This season has had so many turns and twists and surprises. I just don't even know what we're going to do with the finale.
yeah. But yeah, but having said that, I do think that the tide is starting to turn. I think that a couple of years ago when people were really getting woke, they were celebrated and companies would brand in a woke fashion and nothing would happen. And now we're seeing pushback. Now we're seeing things like Bud Light and Target getting pushback for their marketing efforts. Um, and I do think that a lot of people are have kind of had it with it because they now know the details instead of the terminology, which as we were talking about before, is almost the exact opposite of what it is.
Mhm.
Inclusion is actually the most exclusive thing. They call themselves progressives, but they're actually the most regressive
Mhm.
socially. Um, so it is interesting that there is more pushback, but people still they want to push back, I think, against this madness, but they don't always know how. What do you recommend for people that want to do more to protect children, from some of these mutilations, but also protect children that may be getting an education that's woke, where there's no sense of history, there's no teaching of history. It's really a lot of re-education. What can parents do about that?
Parents have to take foremost responsibility for their child's education. If you're allowing or expecting that a child's going to get a fully formed education at whatever school you send them to, whether it's parochial or the public school,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the some of the stories I hear about what's afoot at some of our local private Catholic schools, they're just as woke as the public schools. And these parents
Mm.
are paying, $15,000 a year to have their kids
Right.
indoctrinated by these teachers, so-called Catholic institutions. Um, it, it is a parent's responsibility to get to their child first, and make themselves the authority on any question the kid might
Mm.
have. Um, it's a parent's responsibility to make sure the school knows that you consider yourself the foremost educator of your child and that they are simply contractors, that you are contracting out the reading, writing, and arithmetic. Um, you need to know what's going on in the classroom. You need to be in contact with the teachers. You need to check in with your children every single day. Tell me about the nonsense. Because you're not going to have, sadly, unless you run for school board,
Yeah.
they don't care. Especially in these dark blue states,
Mm.
um, they just, you go and speak to these people and they barely make eye contact with you. They look at you with disdain. You as the taxpayer has what, 2 minutes to explain that having a guy dressed up as a woman with prosthetic breasts at the front of a fifth grader's classroom is wildly inappropriate and likely fetishistic.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yep.
So your kid has to be the kid who is well informed enough and read in on, for example, autogonophilia,
Right.
um, for that kid to know that he has agency, to see that at the front of the classroom and turn around and walk out,
Yep.
um, to be equipped. And yes, there are a lot of conversations that you're going to have with your kids, parents out there. I'm sorry, um, that you're maybe not ready for, but as we call the founder's principle in raising conservative kids in a woke city,
Mm-hmm.
um, founder's principle is the concept, and we've watched it play out in our own homes,
Mm-hmm.
that a child is going to perceive the first person that introduces them to a subject as kind of the expert. So if that's the person that they found on YouTube when they were, you know, Googling gender
Hmm.
questions,
Right,
or if it's porn on the screen, on the phone, on the playground, that's the person that's going to be the expert that that kid's going to go back to when they want more information. So parents, it's got to be you. You got to make
right,
yourself the porn expert. You got to make yourself the gender expert, and you can speak to your children in ways that are age appropriate. Kind of let them lead the conversation. You know, it's best, in my experience, it's best to not flood them with information
right,
because they might just be ready for a little bit. But as long as you're seeding these conversations, they're going to come
right.
back to you when they have bigger questions.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is to, as they become older and more sophisticated, you need to talk about really the history and
Mhm.
of woke and how it came into being. I think it's fascinating that Michel Foucault is the most quoted academic amongst woke academics, and he
Mhm.
was a pedophile. And he was disgusted by the fact that it was illegal in France at the time to be a pedophile. So he built really a belief system around making pedophilia, mainstreaming pedophilia and other sexual perversions, and and that's really the foundation of woke.
Mhm.
And then people wonder why there's a drag queen at the head of a fifth grade class
Mhm.
for these very sophisticated people that are educated and woke, and we wonder why these things are in the school systems that they run. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It seems I should have kind of seen it coming, huh?
Mm. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we've allowed it to get this far when you realize vast supermajorities of people really disagree with this ideology, and yet this ideology is in charge of almost every institution, including education. So
Yeah.
it's wild. It's a minority, but it's a well-placed minority.
Yeah, they've definitely taken charge of the institutions, and that's that's why we wrote the book, because
Mhm.
the smallest, most important institution is your family.
Yes,
And when you have control over, and when your kids know that you're the primary educator, when they know that you're a very safe space to land when they come home with something outrageous that happened at school, if if you cultivate that that family being first and foremost is the priority in your home, you're gonna have a good experience regardless of how you're choosing to educate your children, whether that's
right.
homeschooling. Love you homeschoolers out there. We make a
Yes.
lot of jokes about homeschoolers in the book. We love you. We already got you. Um, but you know, if you can cut away the distractions of everything in this world and just focus on that short time that you have with your kids. It goes by, what did they say to me? And they were so right, those older moms. The days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah, yeah,
And it really, if you think about it, Jewish Jewish boys were ready to be married. They were men at 13 years old.
right.
You know, that hasn't really changed in human developmental
Hmm.
um, stages.
Right,
By the time you make it to 13, I mean they should be shifting into fifth gear and well equipped,
right,
taking on the world with your assistance. And if you make the deposits into your children daily and be on top of it up until that point, you know, you're going to be successful.
right. Yeah. And being taking an active a role in your children's education not only will protect them from woke and a lot of this nonsense, but they will perform better in school. My wife owned a preschool for many years. She's an educator by trade, and the parents that really made a game of learning things and that really took it upon themselves to educate their children those children always perform better than the parents that said, well, you're the teacher, here, teach my kid.
Right.
They're going to perform better anyway, if you're front and center in their lives as students. So
There's there's this great study that I've gone back to many times. I think that it was a gentleman that was on the Claremont podcast. He was talking about how he had was doing a metadata study on
mhm,
parenting, and he went into it wanting to prove that his parenting was exceptional,
mhm,
and therefore he was the reason his children launched so very, very well.
uh-huh,
And instead, he came to discover that you can be an exceptional parent and your kids are going to be great. You can be an average parent, your kids are going to be great. You can be kind of run of the mill, but just show up,
yeah,
your kids are going to be great. That the only power we really have is to deeply damage our kids. So
mm,
you don't have to be the, uber parent with the letters behind your name and knowing all the things. Sometimes adults are coming to this realization that things have gone really wacky in this country, and maybe they're even part of the problem. Maybe they
mm,
thought that, like when I was a kid, that liberal meant liberty. And
yeah,
so they're a liberal, and that's the
right,
way that they're going to vote. And they're coming to realize, oh, I I've been erring and I'm part of the problem. Um, this is a journey that you can take with your kids.
yeah,
You don't have to know all the things. Um, it's not too late if you're
yeah,
coming to this, and you got middle schoolers like, hey, got to sit down. Maybe I owe you an apology because I've been voting against our best interests for a long time now, and we're going to figure this out together.
yeah, yeah, and and you don't want to overthink it either, because I know with some of these kids, Gen Z, they have a lot of these phobias. But the thing is that sometimes they get told at a very young age, that you have some kind of social phobia, and it seems when you hear social phobia, it sounds so insurmountable. But yet I grew up a really shy kid. We moved around a lot when I was growing up, and sometimes I'd get to a new school in the middle of a school year, and everyone had already made their friend groups. So I was kind of a quiet, very, very shy kid. And it was tough for my parents to get me out of my shell. And they really just said, well, you're shy. All you got to do is go to the school dance and ask that girl to dance, or you just need to go up to that boy and ask if you want to play and blah, blah, blah. And, when your parents just are like, ah, you're just shy, it seems like, well, I can just do this. But I feel like if I was ever told you have a social phobia, I'd be like, oh my God. And so part of it, I think nowadays is this overdoing of it. Go ahead.
It is because if you medicalize it, then there's nothing you can do about it, or you
Mm,
have to take a pill for it.
right.
Whereas, if it's just shyness, um, you problem solve for
Right.
shyness because there's a way to kind of change that behavior and make life a little more socially easy for you. But
Right.
if you have social anxiety, well then that means you're broken in a way that can't be fixed.
Mm,
And we have this whole generation. My daughter so often reports how annoying it is that so many of her peers are like, oh, I was having a panic attack. She's like, no, you're not. You're just uptight about the test. It's not a big deal. Chill out. I've seen panic attacks.
yeah.
You're not having a panic attack.
Right.
All of the medicalization. I mean, is it helping our kids? All these
Yeah.
counselors and antidepressant medications and
Right.
anti-anxiety. I mean, get over it. I'm
Yep.
also Gen X. We're about the same age,
There you go. Yeah.
and we just we just came home, made a bag of microwave popcorn. Mom and dad got home around 8 o'clock, maybe, because they were both in service industries. And,
Right.
and, you know, we ate lots of garbage food and drank soda and we survived. Um,
And we didn't wear seat belts. Yep.
we
We're here to
didn't.
talk about it.
My husband tells the story of his mother having to like strap him to her in their little Volkswagen Bug, when he was a little infant. My brother and
Uh,
I, we sat two together with the seatbelt over the both of us in the front of the Datsun, right?
oh man.
I know, right? But um we're not doing our kids any favors medicalizing. We're uh, we're just making normal personality traits and day-to-day struggles into something that they don't have to be responsible for because we put a name on it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's a mistake. That
Yeah.
that is a mistake, and
And
we've
then
never done
beyond
that.
that, you also have social media doing that as well. It seems like a lot of these thought leaders and other content creators, they're vying for attention because there's a lot of stuff out there on. And so the best way to get attention is to say, hey, the world's about to end, or things are really bad, or here's you know, 5 things you need to know before the world ends or something. And we see that and we kind of put it in perspective, but we forget that our kids see that and they're like, oh my God, the world's about to end, and it's they get a lot of this stuff through social media, and you've got to try to your best to limit the amount of time that they're on social media, because there's a lot of negative, crazy stuff on there.
That would be one of the things that my husband Joel and I would say was the best, one of the best decisions we made as parents. Not only did our kids not get a cell phone until they were in high school,
Mm,
but we forbade social media entirely, and have only allowed our daughter, as of the beginning of her senior year, an Instagram profile, because apparently kids communicate in a different way. She made a very um, compelling she made a very compelling case. And because she's proven herself to be a wildly responsible young lady, definitely her
mhm.
father's daughter,
Yeah.
um, uh, we allowed for that, but not letting social media, not letting the comparison and the doom scrolling and all of the things that can be
Mm,
detrimental to our health. We have to remember, people, we are being socially experimented on. We have
yeah.
never we've never had such computing power walking around in our pockets. Who knows what that radiation is doing to our nether regions?
Right.
Um, the levels of experimentation are epic. We're all addicted. We're
Right.
overconnected. None of this humans aren't supposed to be connected in this way.
Right.
Um, and keeping that in mind is probably important for all children, definitely, but maybe some adults out there who are like, hey, yeah, well, what would my life have looked like 100 years ago? Well, if you were really wealthy, maybe you had power, but
Right.
likely you would be in bed when the sun went down and up
Right.
when the sun rose, and you would be working all day and toiling, sustenance farming, and lucky if you could read. So, we're
Yeah.
still those humans. We're
Right.
still chemically and physically those humans. We're just in a wild west kind of environment. We need to remember that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. But we should also remember that we're in a good time in many ways. It seems like woke creates a lot of fake problems for us, but as far as food and as far as comfort, we are so charmed to be living in such a wonderful time period where no one is really starving. We live luxurious lives. Even people that we don't consider are doing well. When we consider, like you were saying before, to somebody who's wealthy from centuries ago, they live much better than kings did a couple of centuries ago. It
Mhm.
really is remarkable. We do have to sometimes sit back and say, "Oh my gosh, we're lucky to be alive in this era." So
I guess that would be my greatest fear about the rise of the woke, because
yeah.
we stand on the shoulders of giants and think that
Mm,
we're flying. Um, the the systems, um, the institutions, uh, all of the things that they want to tear down. These things are intricate and valuable and cannot be easily recreated.
yes.
And we just live in such a lap of luxury that we don't necessarily understand how intricate and delicate the marketplace really is.
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost like a lot of our institutions. It's almost like a Ming vase. Ming vases haven't been around for thousands of years because they're durable. They've been around for thousands of years because someone thought to preserve them. And
Excellent
they
point.
really are messing with some pretty delicate things,
Yeah, and
in
to
our
get to
society.
what?
Yeah.
What's your plan? I've yet to hear what comes after we destroy all things, we eat the rich, we do whatever, insert leftist slogan.
Mm.
Um, I haven't necessarily seen a good plan for what comes after.
Yeah, yeah. The only blueprint is the Marxist one where it's year zero or we're year one. And yeah, that's
We've
certainly
seen how that works
that's
out.
certainly scary. Yes. So but wow, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad you were able to join me for this. This is really great. So so tell people how they can get your book.
Uh, Amazon, of course, we love the Amazon sales. They are
There
the
you go.
biggest bookseller on the planet. So what are you going to do? If you want to read any more about Them Before Us and the work that's going on over there, that's thembeforeus.com. That's a great place where you can go and read the stories of children that have been affected by all of the ills that we do cover in Them Before Us, Why We Need a Global Children's Rights Movement, which I should have gotten out and put next to my other book here.
Well, that's all right. At the end of this video, we're going to have links to all of these things for people to just
I
click on.
appreciate
So
that. I
not a
appreciate
problem.
that. Yeah, and of course, as you and I discussed, there's interviews and what have you on the internet. I'm Stacy Manning, and yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation. I'm so glad that you reached out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll definitely have to talk again.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Have you had it with woke and just want to laugh? Then check out my graphic novel available on Amazon now by searching for Critical Feather Theory, or you can just scan the QR code here. Well, if you like what you saw, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to smack that bell.